Good morning, folks. It is Saturday morning, and hopefully this video goes out tomorrow. It's a two-part video, but they're basically the same thing. They're basically the same issue, the same solution, same situation. So I got a new pedal. I got a MXR M300 to replace the Hall of Fame 2 that died. So the MXR is very popular. It's a fairly new pedal. It is digital, obviously. Most of the reverbs are digital these days. What I liked is, and let's see if I can get this to show. Okay, so you've got multiple modes here. Let's see. I'm trying to get the light on it. I can't really. So you got 6 modes. Just tap, 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 tap through them. And those 6 cover the vast majority of what people do. So you've got a plate, spring, epic, which is epic, but it's not real in your face. It's a very subtle effect. It's got some modulation added in. I like it. That's the one I'm mostly using. Modulated, much more modulation, much more extreme. Room, standard room, really fairly tight, fairly quick. If you crank up the decay, you can almost get to a hall kind of thing. It doesn't have a hall. It's one of the few reverb pedals like this that there's no hall, there's no chamber, there's no cathedral or church or anything like that. This is not that reverb. If you want that big, gigantic room effect, look elsewhere. And then pad. Pad, not for me at all. I am not into these glorious ambient washes of sound, but they're a thing these days. They're popular, and pad is really well done on here. I was impressed. I thought it sounded excellent. It didn't sound digital. It didn't sound, I mean, obviously they are digital. They have a sound that most of us recognize as being digitally generated because there's no way to do that analog. But it didn't have that kind of metallic-y, computery sound to it. It sounded like a really good science fiction or fantasy soundtrack from the movies, where they spent $1 million doing this, and there's a whole orchestra involved, and yeah, this. And by the way, that's how you do it for real. If you don't want to do it on a pedal or something like this, it's an orchestra. It's a gigantic, full stage orchestra playing. That pad sounds epic, which is funny because there's an epic sound, but Mine, Guitar Center sold me as new. It was not new. Clearly this knob is wobbly. There's some residue from somebody else's tape. Somebody brought it back and it was just fine, and they're selling it as new. It was also the one in the display case, so it is certainly possible that this has been their demo unit for a little while. They didn't have a in the box in the back one. So, which leads to, definitely check it out. I liked it, I'm loving it, I'm not going back unless it breaks or something weird happens. My new reverb pedal. Anyway, the returned or demo pedal situation leads to part 2. Part 2 is, this is a digital high amp draw pedal, and it is noisy as hell if you don't have isolated power. In fact, it makes a high-pitched whine through your system. I haven't tried it if it's in the effects loop on its own and the power is all synced up with everybody, but there was not a pedal on my board that I could put it with that didn't make that whine. It had to be on its own, as long as they were all going through my regular power supply. Now, I didn't get a power supply with mine. Open box, whole deal. I got the manual, the warranty card, a sticker, and the pedal. It's supposed to come with a power supply. If you get the power supply with it and you use that power supply separate from your other power supply, you're good. That's what I did. I bought a cheap little power supply I don't even remember, it was some generic off Amazon. Plugged it in, great. Now, this leads to an observation that everybody knows, we all kind of understand, but we sometimes fall for the marketing hype. I have a Donner DP-1 as my power block for my pedal board. Now, that is theoretically isolated. It's a few 9-volt standard output ports, a high output 9-volt port, a 12-volt port, and an 18-volt port. Theoretically, they're supposed to all be isolated, every single one of them. As far as I can tell, there's zero isolation, or if there is, it's not sufficient. It doesn't matter if I use a 9-volt port for everything. It doesn't matter if I've got an ethereal for my delay, and the ethereal can take 9 to 18 volts. It doesn't care. I believe you get a little more headroom and a little more output out of it if you up the amp or up the voltage. I'm not sure. Doesn't matter. The key here is that it's happy with 9 to 18. So I tried it in a 9-volt port with the MXR in a 9-volt port. Separate ports, not... I put the MXR in the high output 9-volt port because that's what it needs. I believe it's 250, it says on here. It says in the manual. It's 250 or 300 milliamps, but it's not huge, but it's not insignificant. There's a lot going on in that pedal. So I put the Wampler in one of the other 9-volt ports, got wine. I had taken all my other pedals out of the loop, off the chain. You know, they weren't hooked into the signal path at all. Put it into the 12-volt port, thinking, okay, I mean, we've gone to different voltage, maybe they're split up that way. Same thing. Went to the 18-volt port. Again, I mean, there's got to be something else going on, right? I mean, they're doubling the voltage. I got to assume there's at least something in there, right? Same. No change. So the Donner is advertised as isolated. I'm not saying they're lying to us, but I'm saying that whatever isolation they might have in there doesn't cut it. It doesn't do it for this job. I've got to assume it doesn't do it for most jobs. I don't have any pedals that are noisy, really. The Tumnus Deluxe is for a clone pretty mild in terms of noise. And then I've got a tuner, the ethereal, and the MXR now. So I'm not generating a lot of noise other than this MXR with its digital nature. So don't know. I got nothing there, but I figured it's worth mentioning that power unit is not isolated as much as they say, and the answer is either a separate power supply for the MXR or a better quality power supply. And I believe what I'm going to try is a True Spot or True Tone, or the company that makes the one spot also makes bigger power supplies, and I think it's True Tone. And they make the CS6 compact thin power supply. And since, as I've probably mentioned before, my plan for my pedal board when I get back to filling it out is a relatively low profile compact board, I needed a smaller pedal supply to fit underneath. And I've been looking at the gig rig setup, but I don't need a lot of what that offers. And as much as I love it, I think it's an awesome piece of hardware. Justifying about $300 to do my board in power, that's hard. That's I mean, that's an extra almost $200. By the time I was done, it was almost $200 more than the CS6, and the CS6 covers everything I need. So at some point in the future, probably in a couple weeks, look for a video on the CS6 with this as the deciding factor, because if this doesn't make any noise, we're good. If I get any whine or other issues, the CS6 is going back, and we'll try something else. And maybe I'll get in touch with Dan and see what he says. You know, it's an expensive piece of hardware, well, set of hardware, but it really does the job. And I mean, as you guys have probably figured out, I like things that work. I like things that you get your money's worth, and it holds up. It lasts. It's quality is worth money to me, not just the end result, but how you got there. To me, good engineering, good quality construction, good planning is worth something. It's worth something not just in the results, but in the experience.